When did you join your father? What year
I
was that?
joined the company in 1967.
Okay. And how many titles you had and how many employees in
Not
67?
many. we, if my dad would have stuck to his knitting with PCA farming and meeting the objectives of that publication and teaching people about the profitable use of our capital, it would have been more productive. He let it fritter away a little bit, and he was doing all sorts of different things for the PCAs. He was printing annual reports for them, and he was printing calendars for them, and all different stuff, which was taking their eye off the ball of the magazine, which was really what was elegant.
Mm-hmm. There's a big piece of history I want to get directly from you.
Okay.
And I understand you were also the brainchild when you split the two magazines off. But tell us about how Johnson Hill got a hold of Feed and Grain and Farm Equipment.
Yeah. Did you ever hear the name Chet Bell? He was my dad's partner. He'd been an accountant with Ernst and Ernst, and one of his early audit clients was a department store in Wisconsin Rapids, Johnson Hills, and then there were several broken down department stores. I can't describe it any other way that he got a hold of, and the company became Johnson Hills Incorporated. And so my dad knew that Lee and John Strom, all things being equal, they would like to be rid of him. And I loved selling. I was very successful selling Radio Time and Madison, and I was successful selling my own publication called The Wisconsin Man. I did develop that for a course in business journalism.
Did you guys acquire, and I might have the name wrong, was it Feed and Grain and Farm Equipment?
Yeah, it was called Feed, Grain, and Farm Equipment.
Okay.
And in Web Crafters, have you heard of Web Crafters?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So they're a good-sized printer in Madison. Mm-hmm. And they were doing mostly catalog printing. And they ended up with Feed, Grain, and Farm Equipment because Feed, Grain, and Farm Equipment couldn't afford to pay the printing bills. So, it was that was it. Yeah. But it was just one magazine. It had been two magazines, but it was one magazine.
Okay.
And
so you got it because they were essentially going to be bankrupt, and so Web Crafters helped get it into your dad's hands. Would that be accurate, or?
Well, it might be accurate. I'm not sure. My dad, there was a management consultant in Racine, Wisconsin, by the name of George Cabot, and he saw that as an interesting opportunity for my dad, because my dad was chasing single sponsor magazines, and this was going to allow him to play on a little bigger ball diamond.
The story that I heard was that it was moving along okay, but that you guys got it, you were making it work, but then that you saw the need that there are two different markets. Yeah. And you executed the splitting off of this. Can you tell that story? If I have that right?
Yeah. Well, so there was the one magazine, Feed, Grain, and Farm Equipment, and there was this very funny looking guy by the name of Jack Cook. He told my dad, Chet Bell, that he had wanted to start a magazine to compete with Feed, Grain, and Farm Equipment. And he sat down and he made up and wrote out a list of all of the commercial feed and grain operations. So country and terminal elevators, feed mixers, feed manufacturers, other grain processors. And he just sat down and he wrote all these names. It was just such colossal BS that it's hard to imagine. They started Farm Equipment, or agricultural equipment dealer, which was its name early on. Jack Cook was, of course, very busy because he was in the process of writing down every single name of every single reader in the universe for feed grain, for feed and grain. And he did know he'd been in that industry for a long time. And one of the things he was doing was borrowing money from advertisers.
Mm.
Have you had that problem?
Our customers aren't in the business of lending us money, no. So,
Yeah, that's good. Well, so he borrowed money from advertisers and to pay his grocery bills and every, I mean, it was really weird. And he would sort of dabble in farm equipment or agricultural equipment dealers. There were some sort of advertisers that had been around for a long time, and he didn't want the two magazines to go away. So he would work on the farm equipment side for a while, and then he'd go back to work on feed and grain. And I didn't like the idea that he was borrowing money from advertisers at all. I mean, I didn't. And so finally, he just he went away. Oh, and then Al Paulson, who we started some magazines called Careers in Wisconsin. I did it as a university project. And then we had Careers in Minnesota, Careers in Iowa, Careers in Tennessee, all of these different publications, and they weren't, it didn't look like it was going anywhere. And, spinning our wheels. And so I said, Al, you need to get out of that careers business, and you can be the ad manager of feed and grain. And wasn't long after that, I guess we sort of pushed Jack Cook in the direction of spending his time on agricultural equipment dealer. And Al was working on feed and grain.
Okay.
And
Jack was an employee of yours?
he was an employee.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't think he wanted to be. I think he wanted to be an independent contractor and thought that he would become a wealthy guy. And that wasn't going to happen. So,
so Jonathan, Don told me that you were, and believes this was a stroke of genius on your part, to recognize that you had, in this one title called Feed, Grain, and Farm Equipment, one broad market. Saw there were two places we could go, and both eventually became enormously successful. Correct?
Right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Tell me about what you recognized in the decision to pursue those separately.
I thought they were two separate markets, and the readers of Feed and Grain Times were commercial businesses in the commercial feed and grain industry, and what had been agricultural equipment dealer Well, we sort of the farm equipment part of the thing were farm implement dealers. And I thought, there's another market segment. There's a market segment there. And so my friend Al Paulson went to work on Feed and Grain Times. And so I took farm equipment. I went to work on that. And I saw, at that time, I think there were 8 or 9 major farm machinery manufacturers. If, when you go down as far as Minneapolis Moline and Oliver and some of those. And so I thought the major manufacturers threw their weight around and, figured that they could do whatever the hell they wanted in selling advertising to those. And I thought, well, this isn't right. They didn't want to buy advertising space and farm equipment because it was just, if they were going to deal with these dealers, they wanted distribution. They wanted those dealers to be their dealers. And they had so much clout as major manufacturers as they could dictate to the dealers that, oh, by the way, you're going to go into open spaces and open additional outlets. And I thought, oh my God, this is great. And when we kind of saw the two separate markets, Al Paulson and I would go over to the fireside and drink. The only problem that we thought that we had done was that the fireside was going to run out of our favorite liquor.